Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. So, y'all, it has been a long time since we had a traditional Zoo News episode. A long time. As a matter of fact, it has been over a month, which is absolutely crazy to me. Took some time off, and the last episode before that time off was the special edition talking about AI animal videos and pictures and stuff. So yeah, it has been a while. And so super appreciative to y'all. I can't even begin to tell you how many of you reached out to tell me it was a good idea to take time off, that you support me taking the time off. Even had a few people reach out and tell me that if anyone gave me any trouble for taking time off, let them know and they'd take care of it for me. It was so sweet, and y'all always make me feel so, so supported and so loved. But in that time, I felt it extra. So thank you for that. And if you couldn't tell from Tuesday's episode, I am not only back, but I am back with a vengeance. I am fired up. I am excited. I am thrilled to be doing the thing again. And I'm excited that you're all here for it. So, okay, so the original plan was just to do a ton of the shortest versions of stories possible this week and to skip the talking about myself part at the beginning. But I decided that doing the short stories would be a disservice to the stories and, frankly, to all of you who listen and enjoy when we go deep on some things. And also, I've had multiple people reach out and tell me they couldn't wait to hear what I did over the break today. So, change of plans. This episode is basically covering news from December 5th through December 23rd, along with one or two more recent things that are kind of important. And so give or take, that is the time frame, and then I'll continue the catch-up over the next week or two. But before we get to the zoozier side of things, I had an absolutely incredible time over my break. So the biggest highlight, and I know I posted about this a lot on the socials, was that Zoe and I decided to spend the week of Christmas, like Christmas into New Year's, in San Diego, going to the San Diego Zoo and the Safari Park. We actually also did one other little detour, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But basically, we spent every single day at least one of those parks, occasionally both, because the crazy thing is that over that week, which is the busiest week for the zoo, which I did not know, they are open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. And zoo at night is a thing, and we did it. So it was just a really special time, and it's really cool to get to see certain things like, the tigers at night at the safari park are so cool. And the platypus, after 6 p.m., the lights come on, and you get to see them better, which is always amazing. And then, same at the zoo. They're tigers. Tigers are great animals for the night. So are hippos. The water's all lit and you can see them. Saw some tapirs bathing right underneath me, almost invisibly because it was so dark, but you could see them and make them out, and it was so cool. Just so many neat and unique experiences. San Diego and the Safari Park not only remain my favorite facility, period, but that city is my favorite place in the country. I love it so much. My favorite coffee shop, Phil's, is out there. It's a California chain, but they're amazing. And just every day was awesome. So the safari park is in Escondido. It's about 40 minutes away from the zoo, depending on traffic. And also in Escondido is a place called Avian Behavior International, although that name's changing slightly, which you'll hear about soon. Because one day we went out and spent some time at ABI with Hillary Hankey. And y'all, if you've been around for a while, you've heard Hillary on the podcast before. And I love her as a human and as a trainer. And she does a lot of free flight bird training. That is the main thing that she does at her place. And it is fantastic. And this time, we were treated to doing some free flight with an Andean condor. This is a species that has been near or at the top of my list of animals that I want to meet for years now. And while there are plenty of Andean condors in zoos around the country, there aren't many that are ambassadors. There was one named Andy N. Condor that lived at Tracy Aviary for many years, and we did an episode about that early on. But Andy has since passed away at a very ripe old age. And when Andy passed, I kind of thought that might have also been the passing of my opportunity to get some up close and personal time with an Andean condor, and it turned out that is not the case. You will hear way more about that on an episode that we did out there, because I cheated a little bit. I did one interview, not gonna lie. I wanted to have Hillary back on the podcast, and y'all are gonna love that episode, so I'm glad I did it. That was the only work I did on the entire vacation, though, and honestly, to get to hang out with an Andean condor, trust me, it was worth it. So, okay, couple other things that I want to tell y'all about, and I'll try to keep these short. My holiday with my family was fantastic. Every year, we do an advent calendar for Miles, which is funny because we're not religious people at all, and Advent is a religious thing, but it's just a great way to kind of, focus on our relationship for 24 days, and he FaceTimes with me every day and opens the little gift, and it's nice. And this year, our theme was animals. Shocking, I know. But since Miles is getting older, one of the things that we did was some of the gifts were actually donations in Miles's name to things that he cares about with animals. So, like, for instance, he loves Slash the Red Panda at Elmwood Park Zoo. So we donated, I think, $10 to specifically go to Slash and his care and whatever he needs at Elmwood Park Zoo. We did something similar at Aquarium of Niagara. Miles's favorite animal is koalas. And so we did this donation to an organization that plants trees in koala habitats to help take care of them. It was just awesome. And Miles was very into it, which was very cool. So I thought y'all would appreciate that. And then two other quick things. I mentioned this on the socials, but in case you didn't see it, there is an organization that every year does a bunch of lists that they put together of the best podcasts in a variety of categories. And the site is called FeedSpot, and I've been on their list for the last couple of years in various places, getting as high as second in some places in some of the categories. But this year, Rossifari was the number 4 overall animal podcast, the number 2 animal conservation podcast, the number 2 aquarium podcast, and the number 1 zoo podcast, beating out podcasts like Zoo Logic and the Cincinnati Zoo's podcast and the San Diego Zoo's podcast, all of which I love and listen to and am constantly inspired by. So super proud of that, super touched by being included on the list and especially being number 1 on the zoo list. That was incredible. So yay. Thank you guys for all the support, because I keep doing this because of all of you. And then last but not least, as y'all know, I am on the steering committee of Safe Red Panda, and we now have a fundraiser going where we are selling logo t-shirts and hoodies and all that good stuff. So you can check out my profile or go to @SafeRedPanda on Instagram. Or on Facebook, and you can find out how to buy yours. It is being done through Bonfire, and They're fantastic. It's a really cool logo. It was designed by the team at Cincinnati Zoo, and I hope you all check them out and maybe get yourself a Safe Red Panda shirt or hoodie or something. The proceeds will all go to the work we are doing to help save red pandas. So with all of that said, I think it's time to get to the reason you're here, which is the zoo newsy type stuff. So here we go. All right, no big headline story this week, in part because I am trying to hit a lot of the smaller ones that came up. But we'll start off with our births. And I will say, for births and deaths, there were so many every single week, as there always are, that I did have to cut these lists down quite a bit. And so I went ahead and did that. Apologies to anyone who sent in a birth or death from the time period I mentioned. That didn't make it in, but otherwise this whole podcast would just be, and then this was born, and then this was born, and then this was born, and this died. We're sad. End of podcast. So instead of that, I will tell you that 2 maned wolf pups have been born at Paignton Zoo. Parents Tulak and Lua are doing well, as are the pups. This is particularly important as maned wolves do not have a high breeding success rate in human care, but new guidelines recently came out to hopefully help with that situation, and these pups were conceived almost immediately after those guidelines were implemented. It could be a coincidence, but I choose to hope that it's not. And actually, I think 2 pups were also born at the San Diego Zoo, actually while I was out there. And these also would have been conceived shortly after the new guidelines were implemented. So again, could be a coincidence, but pretty excited that there are new guidelines and all of a sudden there are maned wolf pups popping out. 2 serval kittens have been born at the Nashville Zoo. Named Alexander Hamilton and Theodore Roosevelt, but going by Xander and Theo, the 2 were born to Mom Cleopatra and Dad Churchill, the ambassador servals at the zoo. Mom Cleo is co-rearing her cubs with the human staff at the zoo. This is the first time the zoo is trying this approach. The cubs stay with Cleo for nursing and to learn natural behaviors, while keepers provide daily hands-on socialization to prepare them for their lives as ambassador animals. Pretty cool idea, and I think it will turn out well. The Phoenix Zoo has announced the first ever successful hatching of a curl-crested aracari at the zoo. In fact, 2 were hatched, fledged, and left the nest successfully and can now be seen on habitat. ZooAtlanta has celebrated the birth of a white-headed buffalo weaver chick. This hatching is incredibly important as the population in human care has been on the decline and the SSB has tried new measures to help with the breeding of the species. Hopefully, these chicks represent proof that those efforts are in fact working. And whether they do or not, still an important birth. Multiple giraffes have been born lately. The Phoenix Zoo saw the birth of a female Maasai giraffe. 3 have been born at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park over the span of a week, and I was actually fortunate enough to see 2 of them, each less than 24 hours old. Now, when giraffes are born, they're around 6 feet tall, which is exactly how tall I am. So it's crazy because, like, on one hand, it's crazy on both sides, because on one hand, that's a really big baby, like a 6-foot-tall baby, right? I mean, that's insane. On the other hand, you see them standing next to 17-foot-tall giraffes, and they don't even look like real giraffes. It's the weirdest combination of like, oh, you're too small to be a thing, but you're too large to be a baby, and it messes with you when you see it. But I'm really excited about those births. And last but not least for this section, Defiance Zoo and Aquarium has welcomed a Asian small-clawed otter pup to Mom Pintar and Dad Sebastian. They are both first-time parents, but are doing exceptionally well taking care of the little one behind the scenes. The first health check was performed recently and was all positive for the pup, so everything is going well. As an interesting side note, Asian small-clawed otter pups don't open their eyes until they are around 45 days old, which is a crazy long time when you think about how vulnerable they are. So, very cool for Defiance. And then moving on from our births, we get to our deaths for the week. And honestly, the animal story, that made me the saddest since our last Zoo News episode was the passing of Lincoln, one of the red pandas at Zoo Knoxville. Lincoln was 12 years old and had recently been diagnosed with cancer. Lincoln was an incredibly special boy, one I spent hours with during my visits to Zoo Knoxville. He had this ability to look at you in an incredibly judgmental way, which is kind of hilarious coming from a mostly sleepy red panda. Actually, it's kind of amusing, but just a few months ago, Sarah Glass, the head of the Red Panda SSP and lead panda keeper at Zoo Knox, randomly sent me a picture of Lincoln with a message that just said, "Judgy Panda judges you." We are friends, but we don't text regularly or anything, and it was such a great moment and such a fun reminder of how much I've gone from an outsider to a true part of this community. And I will say, Lincoln really, really did look judgmental in the picture. Oh, Lincoln. I was actually having a rough day when she sent that, and it made the entire day better, an effect that Lincoln could have whether judging you in person or judging you in photograph form. He is so missed by his team who loved him so ridiculously much. Another heartbreaking story comes from our good friends at Tanganyika Wildlife Park. They have suffered through a really tough time recently as a disease swept through their sloth population. 3 of their 4 sloths, Oscar, Molasses, and Chewy, passed away suddenly from this disease. Their 4th sloth, Sydney, was also showing signs of the same issue that led to the deaths of the first 3, but seems to have pulled through and is now being managed for the issue. And the issue is a chronic kidney disease that went through the whole population. It's really hard for a staff to lose an animal, especially an ambassador animal that is beloved, but to lose an entire group of animals at the same time, it's honestly so unfair. I had the pleasure of meeting all 4 of these sloths earlier this year, and their personalities were amazing to behold. They were all very different animals. And I can say with certainty that their keepers loved them so, so dearly. Now, if you'd like more information about the kidney disease and how it affects sloths in general and the sloths at Tanganyika in particular, you can go to Tanganyika's website, where they posted a very thorough blog explaining what happened and what we know and don't know about sloths and the available biscuits that exist for their diet and how maybe that's part of the problem and how facilities, not just Tanganyika, but all around the country and the globe really are working to figure this out. Honestly, it's one of the most impressive and detailed explanations I've ever seen a facility release in the wake of a loss or honestly about anything. It's also a living document that they plan to continue to update as more information is found out, both about their sloths and about sloth populations and this renal issue in general. I am wildly impressed by this amount of transparency, and I learned a ton reading their document, which I thought was really cool. And actually, another animal that featured prominently in a Rossifari episode has also passed away. Coolid, a 17-year-old male breeding giraffe at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. Coolid was one of the giraffes we talked about extensively in the giraffe episode from Cheyenne Mountain, and is the one we got to see hoof care up close for. Watching the trimming and shaping and healing of his hooves and standing directly underneath him is an incredible memory that will be forever stuck in my mind. Being under a bull giraffe, and obviously want to be super clear, it was all safe. I could not have been stomped on, anything like that. This was, done at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, an incredible facility with some of the best giraffe care in the country, if not the world. But being right there, right at his hooves and being able to look up and just see the majesty of this gentle giant was so much. I'm so sad that he has passed. Aita, the 13-year-old American red wolf at the North Carolina Zoo, has passed away. She was the oldest wolf at the zoo and gave birth to 13 pups in her life. Known for her missing leg and the fact that she didn't let it affect her basically at all, her huge presence will be missed at the zoo. All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Please join me for the Nature Disturbed podcast, a podcast about the good, the offensive, and the confusing parts of the animal kingdom, from the sewers of Florida searching for alligators. Oh no, did I forget to put the bins out? To the surface of Mars, investigating the possibility of life beyond Earth. Sorry, I had some bubbles lodged in my throat. I said, to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, all while interviewing scientists about their research along the way. Do you like comedy, whimsical storytelling, and learning about the natural world? If not, then you'll hate the Nature Disturbed podcast.
Kevin Bacon has passed away. No, not the actor who reportedly pays the DJs at weddings he attends to not play the song Footloose, but the Vietnamese pot-bellied pig who called Zoo Knoxville home. Kevin was 16 years old at the time of his passing, an advanced age for the species. Kevin was a very loved ambassador who spent lots of time helping guests fall in love with his species and honestly understand more about pigs in general. And he is terribly missed. And then last but not least in this section, our friends at Roger Williams Park Zoo have said goodbye to Romo, a 13-year-old giant otter that called the zoo home. His passing came only a few weeks after the loss of his brother, Fernando. Romo had been suffering from cancer, and the disease advanced quickly in the last weeks of his life, leaving the veterinary team with no option but to humanely euthanize him. The two brothers were such an amazing sight at the zoo, and their antics always amused guests in the Rainforest building, which will not be the same without them. And that brings us to the rest of our zoo news stories for the week. All right, so 2 stories have been sent to me a bunch in the last couple of weeks, and I want to start this section with a discussion of those. But the first one's going to be incomplete for now, and that one involves the San Diego Zoo and some gift shop controversy. So a person online went and put up a post showing that the San Diego Zoo was selling cookies with AI-generated images of animals on them and asking people to write or call the zoo and complain because obviously AI, especially generative AI, is really problematic when it comes to animals. And so a bunch of people did this and the post went viral and the zoo has pulled the cookies. And now the same person is saying that the cookies are not the only AI-generated thing in the gift shops, but that a lot of the actual, merch at the San Diego Zoo is also AI-generated. All right, so I'm going to tackle this in a couple of different ways, but the first thing I'm going to say is I actually reached out to my contacts at the San Diego Zoo to try to discuss this and find out what is going on. But I didn't do that until shortly before I was recording just because of how my week has gone. And so I haven't heard back from them. And I'm hoping to. I don't know if I will or not. Sometimes places just like to, hopefully let things die down. But so, yeah, I'm not going to do as deep of a dive as I normally would into this kind of thing because I'm hoping to hear back from them. And I am hoping that, we can have a discussion about this. We'll see what happens. But what I will tell you is I just spent an entire week at the San Diego Zoo and Safari Park, as I mentioned, and I didn't go and look at those cookies. I will say that. But I love the gift shops there. And honestly, sometimes the merch changes every day or two. So every time I go to either of the parks, I go and I look at the gift shops. All of them. I love them. And I did not see a single bit of merch that looked AI generated to me. Now, that does not mean that is accurate. It does not. As I got to tell you all, if you haven't been there are multiple gift shops at each facility, and they have a ton of stuff. And it is, I guess, possible, but also, part of the AI backlash that I'm seeing right now is that people are calling all kinds of things AI generated that are not. I've had multiple photographs as well as videos of me drumming with Emily called AI by multiple people. And I've talked to a lot of other wildlife photographers and zoo videographers and stuff that are having the same issue. So yeah, I don't know, but I will say I'm always on the lookout for the AI stuff because we talk about it on here so much, and I didn't see a single thing that stood out as AI to me. Again, I did not go to the little snack counter that has the cookies and the fudge. It's one place right in the main gift shop, but kind of its own thing. And the other thing is I don't know who runs the gift shops and the food and beverages for the San Diego Zoo. I know that the SSA group runs a whole lot of them at a lot of zoos, and that would be my guess for San Diego, though I don't know. And I know that when I had the president of SSA on the podcast, he was committed to not using generative AI. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's very possible that it's something that the zoo did not know about, even if that is the case, especially with just the cookies. And the fact that they were pulled says a lot to me, know better, do better. But I'm hoping to be able to update this story more with more information when I have it. But I got to tell you, this secondary part of that, a lot of the merch is now AI generated. Not saying it's not true. Gonna do more research into this, but spent an entire week there, regularly going into 6 or 7 gift shops because there are literally that many of them, not to mention other kiosks and stuff. And nothing stood out as AI to me. And the stuff that I bought and Zoe bought and that we got for Miles is definitely not AI generated. We spent a lot of money in those gift shops, y'all. So yeah, I'll keep an eye on it for now. And thank you to everyone who sent that to me. It's an incredibly important thing to discuss, and we'll try to get to the bottom of it more. The second one that a lot of people sent me involves our friends at Smithsonian's National Zoo and includes an animal that I've gotten to spend a lot of time with at that zoo. It turns out that one of the binturongs at the zoo bit 2 of its zookeepers, and the story quickly took off. The binturong was fine, and the keepers were injured, but ultimately fine. And, not to downplay it, but this is one of those things that happens. And yeah, it's really scary. And there are certainly other stories of binturongs at zoos hurting their keepers, some quite badly. But what surprised me the most about this story was how many people reached out to me with concern about the binturong and whether or not it would be punished. And the answer is no. I did confirm that with the zoo because, I have the contacts and why not? But it didn't have to. I already knew the answer. That's just not how things work. Everyone who works in a zoo understands the age-old saying that if it has teeth, it can bite, and if it has claws, it can scratch. Binturongs happen to have both, so there is always a risk of something happening. And I say this as a person who has met a bunch, including the 2 at the National Zoo, and also had many at other facilities sitting on my shoulders and crawling around all over me. If you put yourself into that situation, you know the risk you are taking, and doubly so if you're a keeper. And again, this isn't to downplay the injuries that the keepers sustained or the fact that the zoo is, I'm sure, reviewing its handling procedures for the animals and making sure that extra security is in place, whatever they're doing. It's the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. They're doing the right thing. I am confident in that. But yeah, I promise there was never a threat of the zoo putting the animal down or even, denying it dinner for the night or putting it on timeout or making it do extra chores for the week or anything like that. These things happen. The staff reacted accordingly. They are well trained for when these types of things happen. And, everyone moved on. So yeah, it's, I'm glad that people reached out. I'm glad that y'all were concerned about the binturong. I love that so much. But, don't get stories where, kids fall into habitats and, Harambe, right, happens or something like that. Don't get that mixed with, if a zookeeper gets bitten, the animal's going to be put down. There's a huge difference between actively needing to save the life of a human, and so the shooting team gets involved, versus penalizing an animal for biting or scratching or drawing blood or whatever. Huge difference. And when it comes to good accredited zoos, there's no way in heck that's going to lead to any kind of punishment. Moving on from that. One of the big themes that came up repeatedly on both the podcast and on social media last year was an ongoing discussion about the difference between the word sanctuary and the word zoo, and how a lot of people don't really understand the difference, in part because the words don't have any legally mandated definition. In other words, any place can call itself a sanctuary. And in the last year, we have tracked 3 places being shut down or forced to be sold by authorities because of animal welfare concerns. Well, it had been 3. Now going into this year, we hit number 4. And the numbers are 2 sanctuaries, 1 zoo, and 1 aquarium. The latest one is the sanctuary known as Born to Be Free, an animal sanctuary in Fraser Park, Ventura County, California. The sanctuary, and we're doing some air quotes there, had a ton of restricted animals, including lions, leopards, hybrid animals, and a bear, many of whom were kept in small cages despite the name being Born to Be Free. All animals were removed to actual licensed and accredited sanctuaries earlier this year, and the owners were forced to pay fines and reimburse the authorities for the costs of their investigation. As part of the punishment, the organization and owner will never be allowed to get exotic animal permits and have them again. Now, I do have to say that with that being said, there were absolutely no health issues reported with any of the animals. So it's not like they were abusing them or anything. They just weren't allowed to have them and had them in too small cages and stuff like that, which some could say is abuse, but they weren't physically beating the animals. They weren't doing really bad stuff, but not great. And yet it was a sanctuary. So yeah, I found that really interesting, and just another reminder that that word technically doesn't mean anything. Over the last month, multiple facilities around the United States have yet again announced the closing of aviaries and the removal of birds from habitats due to highly pathogenic avian influenza going around the country. And it truly is amazing to step back and see that over the last month, this really has been traveling all around the country again, as facilities from multiple parts of the U.S. have seen it close enough to them to take these measures over the last few weeks. I know that birds fly far and frequently, but it really is something to step back and see cases of this happening all around the country over the span of just a month as the birds move. This is one of those issues that I think we're just going to have to keep seeing for a long, long time. I don't know that we're anywhere closer to a cure. Taronga Zoo has announced an incredible conservation effort planning to rewild a huge piece of land in northern New South Wales to transform it into a safe haven for koalas, platypus, spotted quolls, regent honeyeaters, and other native animals that will be bred at the zoo. This announcement came shortly after the announcement that 1,600 hectares of koala habitat was going to be cleared in Queensland for Australia's largest wind farm, providing a nice balance to some bad news for native animals in the country. A new facility is opening in Orlando in February, and it's gotten a lot of attention in the animal community online. Sloth World touts itself as the world's first slotharium, where you can step into the home of over 40 sloths, wandering through a conservation-focused educational exhibit. And unsurprisingly, I have questions, concerns, but also hope. Okay, admittedly, it's mostly the first two. The Sloth World website states that the attraction will be conservation-focused, but that's all it says. The entire site, other than that, is dedicated to pre-sale tickets and their merch store. They have a lot of merch for a facility that isn't open. And I gotta say, it's actually really cute. But that's it. There's no mission statement, no explanation of who is running things or what type of conservation storytelling they will use, or whether they will be pursuing any type of accreditation, or whether sloth selfies will be allowed or not, which is something that is hugely frowned upon in the sloth conservation world right now. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what comes of this and whether it's more a roadside zoo and exploitative tourist trap, or whether it becomes the bastion of sloth conservation in the United States. I know which one seems more likely, but I'm going to hold out hope that this place is awesome. I love this next story so much. That's not going to surprise you, but a fascinating study was done recently on red panda encounters and the effect they have on the welfare of the animals involved. The study found no negative effects of the encounters on the animals at all, and also found that higher offspring counts and higher longevity occurred in encounter pandas than non-encounter pandas, though the authors did state that it is possible that this has less to do with the encounters and more to do with better husbandry or other factors that pandas involved in encounters experienced. This is such a fascinating study to me because ambassador encounters are something that are constantly being reevaluated in zoos and aquariums, and there is a subset of the very pro-zoo crowd that still hopes to see ambassador encounters removed from zoos overall. The fact that this study has shown not just no negative effects, but measurable positive effects in areas that matter a lot, longevity and reproductive success, is a huge factor in looking at the future of animal encounters, I think, for this species and beyond. And last but not least, in the Zoo News segment this week, a quick follow-up to a story we've been following for a while. 2 dolphins, a nurse shark, 4 birds, 5 yellow-footed tortoises, and 1 red-footed tortoise have all been moved from Miami Seaquarium to a new home at Clearwater Marine Aquarium. It's awesome that this facility, which is relatively close, same state, was able to take in so many of these animals, and I'm just so glad that they went to a facility that just will give them such great lives. It's absolutely incredible. And that brings us to Stereotypical Animal Podcast Theme Song. Here to bring you to conservation news. Okay, so this first story involves a movie, Zootopia 2. And before I get to the actual story, I have to say, it's an awesome movie. We took Miles to see it, and all 3 of us loved this film. It features a ton of really amazing animals. It sets up a potential 3rd movie. It's really well done. It's really funny. A lot of the jokes are very animal specific, so you Rossifarians will love them. And it weirdly did incredibly well, like breaking all kinds of box office records as a sequel to a film that was not hugely successful that came out a decade ago. So weird, but cool, but yay, animals. But unfortunately, whenever an animal movie becomes popular, especially a kids one, something happens and it's happening again, and it's just heartbreaking to see. Gary, the snake in Zootopia 2, has become so popular in China that online platforms have seen a huge surge in venomous pit viper purchases. This means a bunch of things, including a surge in the illegal poaching of the species, and that a bunch of people are going to be purchasing a venomous reptile and handling it improperly, leading to injuries and deaths of both the snakes and the people involved in accidents. Not great. And this is another angle of the same thing we discuss all the time on this podcast. You have to make animals known and loved in order to help them and save them. But in making animals known and loved, especially smaller species of the easy-to-keep as a pet size, even though they clearly aren't easy to keep as pets, you see a surge in this type of behavior. And we're actually going to talk about this more in a later story, but, I tend to look at these things from a very pragmatic approach. In my opinion, anyway, I think it's pragmatic. I often ask myself and others, what is the positive impact of this fame? What is the negative impact of this fame? How much do they balance out? Does one score, so to speak, rise a lot more than the other? So, I don't know. But I find that a lot of people don't think that way, and it's incredibly hard, if not downright impossible, to find studies that look at both sides of the issue. So you have people who are absolutely opposed to any, let's say, selfies with any animals that could be trafficked, with the idea that even one additional pet in the illegal trade is not worth it. Then you have others who say that if a whole bunch of people love an animal from seeing it in a movie or online or those selfies or whatever, and they are motivated to help save it and learn more about it and take conservation actions, then that benefit might outweigh the extra animals in the trade and also will lead to conservation organizations having the ability to fight that illegal wildlife trade for those species. So overall, it might lead to more animals being kept out of the pet trade, even with an initial spike. And the truth is, I think this is different for every species and for every situation, and I don't think there's an easy answer. And we'll come back to this in just a moment here. But before we do, Nepal has recently completed its survey of its snow leopard population and found the population to be sitting at 397 individuals. This is considered a stable population for the area, and drones and remote camera traps have found snow leopards in areas that they have not been seen in for quite a while. So, while we would certainly love to see that number go up, it's actually really great news for the snow leopards of Nepal. Jaguars have seen a strong population boom in Costa Rica's Santa Rosa National Park, and it's having a surprising positive impact on sea turtles. Thousands of olive ridley sea turtles come ashore in mass nesting events in the area, and over the last few decades, these populations have been attacked by smaller predators like coyotes and dogs. However, those predators have learned about the increase of jaguars in the area due to conservation efforts, and I assume they learned the hard way and not through, reading about helping the jaguars online or anything. But as such are less interested in hunting in exposed areas like beaches, meaning they aren't attacking the turtles or their nests in nearly the numbers they have in the past. I think this is called restoring balance or something like that. So here's an interesting story that could be an isolated incident or could have really interesting ramifications for conservation in general. The Smithsonian recently did a DNA study on iguanas living on an island in Mexico, and the study revealed that the animals are native to the island. And this was surprising, as it has long been assumed that the animals in question were an invasive species. So obviously this will have ramifications on how scientists handle conservation on the island moving forward. And no, just for the record, I don't understand how genetic evidence can say whether a species is invasive or native. I guess the genetics can tell where something is from. That's crazy to me, but I am not a geneticist. But yeah, this creates such an interesting dynamic for species that are believed to be invasive. We've already talked on here in the past about the question of whether at some point invasive species become part of the current ecosystem or habitat to the point that removing them will actually have a negative impact on said ecosystem. Nature constantly evolves and changes and fills niches and stuff, so it's very possible that if an invasive species has been around long enough, it will be an essential part of the current ecosystem. So now the question is, if we haven't tested the genetics, how do we know if a species even is invasive? Should we be removing invasive species if there's a chance that they aren't that? It's a fascinating study that could have huge implications for the field in general, as we now have to wonder both whether invasive species have become part of the true ecosystem of the area, and also whether they are in fact invasive. Oh, and speaking of removing invasive species, there's an interesting strategy being used in Hawaii to combat invasive mosquito species, introducing more of the animals. But with a catch, obviously. Scientists are releasing hundreds of thousands of lab-reared male mosquitoes into the forests of Hawaii every week. These males can't bite and don't reproduce successfully. They also carry a bacterium that is harmless to humans and other species, which prevents wild female mosquitoes from producing viable eggs. The goal is to shrink the population of invasive mosquitoes because they spread avian malaria, a disease that is devastating the native population of honey creepers, of which only 17 of the 50 known species still remain, thanks in large part to the disease. Okay, so one of the recurring topics in conservation lately has been AI for a variety of reasons. And it's particularly interesting, and it's a nuanced conversation when you allow it to be. And when you get beyond the idea of generative AI, which uses so many resources and also steals from people and is just generally bad. But things like AI analysis of large amounts of data can really help with the conservation of species if the info is correct. The Draft Conservation Foundation has been using that very strategy to basically track what giraffe is which in the wild from their photo traps and stuff, because they are able to tell from the patterns on their skin, and AI can just do that like automatically. Very cool. But it does lead to the question of, is it worth the amount of resources that go into it? How do you balance saving a species with the damage done to the environment in situations like that? I think most conservationists are hoping that the environmental toll will lessen because there is a lot of potential positive stuff that comes from the use of non-generative AI in the conservation world. And that's coming from me, a person who rails against the ridiculous use of AI so frequently that I'm sure a few of you have started picturing the old man yells at clouds Simpsons meme whenever I bring the topic up. But on a side note, I do have to say I'm so proud of my son, Miles, for taking such an interest in and understanding of the problems surrounding the use of generative AI and constantly speaking against it and telling his peers and my peers and everybody why it is bad. He's 11, and I know the temptation to use AI is constant with the younger generation. So yeah, this is clearly proof that I'm doing something right as a parent because he is not having it. No, but seriously, I'm really proud of him for that. But I digress. The reason I'm bringing up all of this AI stuff right now is that there's an interesting, relatively new potential positive for AI usage and data usage in general. Something that could actually help combat some of the ecological problems caused by the process. Finnish utility company Fortum Oy is building a heat recovery facility on the site of a huge Microsoft data center in Kirkkonummi, Finland. The idea is that this heat can be repurposed to heating houses in the area. And it's actually not the first time it's been done. In fact, a data center that opened a decade ago in the town of Montsala, also in Finland, has provided heating to both the air and the water of houses in the town since it opened, over 20,000 homes. The technology continues to grow and become both cheaper and more efficient, meaning that more areas could get heat from data centers, saving on the environmental impact of heating in traditional ways, and thus helping to balance out some of the impact of big data on the environment. While this is still a relatively new and fairly underutilized technology, it's interesting to ponder what it would look like if it became more commonplace. And this gets to the core of the type of question I think conservationists keep facing more of. How do you figure out the balance of the negative and positive aspects of any conservation effort? We've looked at this type of question with a lot of different topics over the years. Most recently, we have pondered if social media is able to increase the awareness of a species, but also cause the illegal wildlife trade for said species to rise. How do you balance those two things? Is there a number of extra animals in the pet trade that are worth it for a percentage of increase in awareness and conservation efforts? Is it worth creating small reserves if the genetic diversity in the area isn't enough to prevent a lot of inbreeding amongst the animals? We'll get to that more in a minute. Fascinating stuff. And I spend so long talking to people about these trade-off ideas when we discuss conservation efforts, and it's always super interesting. But right now it seems like AI and big data in general isn't going anywhere. So any effort like this to help curb the environmental impact is in fact a positive. And speaking of those interesting trade-offs, here's a fascinating story from India. The Similipal Tiger Reserve is a protected land area focused on preserving tigers, but it has a relatively small population of the cats, with around 30 or so tigers in the reserve. Obviously, that's a great thing, and saving tigers is a hugely important conservation goal. But the population in this reserve is so small that inbreeding seems to be happening at an alarming rate, and there is evidence of this to the naked eye. Or the eye wearing glasses, since my naked eye couldn't tell a tiger from a rock unless it was practically eating me. Anyway, right around 50% of the population of tigers in this area are exhibiting pseudomelanism, a genetic mutation that is incredibly rare in tigers normally. The current belief is that only an incredibly large amount of inbreeding amongst the cats could lead to such a prevalent spread of such a rare genetic mutation. The pseudomelanism presents visually in an interesting way. Picture a tiger. Now pour black ink all down its back, which drips into the stripes we expect to see on the cat and maybe even creates some additional ones. So you've got a tiger with an almost purely black back and maybe with thicker and more stripes in certain areas going down it, but otherwise it's just a tiger. It's actually stunningly beautiful. But again, it's also an indication that even saving animals in reserves can create issues for those protected populations. And to be clear, there isn't anything medically wrong with the cats. They have pseudomelanism. It's just a visual difference. But inbreeding obviously comes with its own problems. So yeah, it's an interesting look at, again, the trade-offs that conservation sometimes require. And to end this section on a super happy note, the largest wildlife overpass in North America has been completed in Colorado over I-25. Wildlife overpasses are such a cool concept, and this one is huge. Hopefully, states keep investigating ways to make these work and investing more into these crossings, because heaven knows we could use a bunch over the highways in places like Pennsylvania and New York, where deer collisions are considered so commonplace that honestly, it's almost a joke. And that brings us to...
It's time for other news. It's time for other news. Hey, now, right now, it's time. It's time for other news. Hey, it's a segue to the part called other news.
All right, so I've only got one story in this area this week. And honestly, I'm kind of only sharing it to share a story that I've probably told on here before, but I'm hoping some of you haven't heard, or maybe you'll just not remember it, because I keep getting told that people don't memorize every word of this podcast, which seems weird to me, but, y'all do y'all. Anyway, a man has gone viral for lying to his son. And the story is hilarious to me because, as you may remember, I've experienced something similar. So, the man's post on Reddit explains that 24 years ago, his then 6-year-old son got him a mug with a picture of a manatee on it. When the father reacted in a lukewarm fashion, the kid was upset, and so the father ended up assuring him that he loved it and that, in fact, manatees were his favorite animal. Well, since then, manatee gifts have been the default gift from the son for Christmas, birthdays, Father's Day, all the things. Shirts, calendars, beer steins, pins, photos, you name it. If it's got a manatee on it, it's been gifted to this dude. Now, to celebrate the father's 55th birthday, the son has booked a trip for them to go to Florida to actually see manatees, and he's so excited about it and telling everyone in the family. But as you probably figured out by now, the father doesn't love manatees, doesn't care about them at all. And he posted this fact to Reddit, going viral for it. It's a funny story on its own, though I do have to question the sanity of anyone who doesn't love manatees, especially after being presented with their adorableness for 2.5 decades. Like, how do they not grow on you? But this story resonated with me because I have my own story like it. A few years ago for my birthday, my parents, Miles, and I all went to the Smithsonian's National Zoo in D.C. I was, unsurprisingly, in a hurry to get to the red panda habitat, but as we walked past the Asian small-clawed otters, there was a feeding going on. Cool, love that, always fun. We stopped to observe for a bit. But of course, I quickly proposed moving on. Again, red pandas. My father, my soft-spoken father, who is one of the most agreeable people I've ever met, said, "Hold on, I want to stay here." Which surprised me. Okay, but that's fine. But then he looked at me and goes, "Otters are my favorite animals," which floored me because I have been the manatee kid for him only with polar bears. Starting in around 6th grade, my parents started getting a few polar bear items, and knowing that my mom's favorite animals are elephants, I assumed that my dad loved polar bears. I started buying him polar bear merch, polar bear adoptions, plush polar bears, donating to charities that take care of polar bears, sending him pictures when I went to zoos with polar bears, you name it. And this went on from 6th grade until this was probably 3 years ago, when he finally told me that they're not his favorite. Otters are his favorite in that moment at the National Zoo. His animal-loving, conservationist, Rossifari hosting son had spent years and thousands of dollars on polar bear presents for him, and he was obsessed with otters. Now, I'm lucky that he actually really does love polar bears too, unlike Mr. Manatee over there from the Reddit post, but I was flabbergasted. I'm proud to say that I have since gotten him multiple otter-related gifts, including an otter encounter at Elmwood Park Zoo. But he still gets polar bear stuff, including a polar bear tracking plush from Follow this year for Christmas, because let's be honest, there's not a huge call for North American river otter conservation, and so I balance the two now, because again, isn't conservation and gift giving all about figuring out that balance?
Animal, animal, animal holidays. Animal, animal, animal holidays.
All right, it is January, meaning it is 2026. Holy crap, that's crazy. January doesn't have an animal month, but it is a good time to get your Peppermint Narwhal animal holiday calendars if you haven't yet, and I actually have a few that I'll be giving away on the socials soon, so keep an eye on that if you would like one. As far as days, we ramp up slowly. There are only 2 different days with animal holidays this week. January 10th is Save the Eagles Day and also World Desert Day. And the 16th is Appreciate a Dragon Day. And I love that so much. And if y'all listened to the holiday special, and if you didn't, what is wrong with you? Go listen to it. Then you know that there's one person who was on there who we all know will be appreciating a dragon that day and every day. All right, there you have it. The first Rossifari Zoo News of 2026 is done. And I need y'all to picture this, okay? So I wrote this as I do, sitting at home some of the time, sitting in a coffee shop some of the time, all of the things. But then tonight, Thursday, Zoe had a thing at work that she had to go do. I can't go into details. It's not a good situation, but it's fine for her. She is helping out with a tough situation. That's all I can say. But so she had to go in and she wanted me to come for moral support, but I couldn't actually go in and be part of the thing because not a doctor. So I took my recording gear and the microphones that I use for interviews, and I sat in a car in a dark parking lot with the car completely off and recorded most of this. If you notice that my voice seemed to change tone at some point, it's because I got home and finished it. But I was just sitting in a car in a parking lot of a veterinary hospital in Buffalo, New York for 40 minutes, steaming up the windows by recording this podcast. You're welcome. Such a fun image. Anyway, I would like to say thank you to you all for being here. Looking forward to this incredible new year. I've got some really cool announcements coming soon, y'all. Looking forward to that starting very soon. Don't forget about the tree kangaroos. Why are they in trees? Shirt and hoodie and stuff that are still available for a limited time. Don't forget about the Safe Red Panda fundraiser that is going on over on that page. And don't forget that I have awesome patrons, especially my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Shank, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, Kevin Williams, and Cormac McMuffin. Meow. I'd also like to thank everyone who contributed to this week's episode, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbook, Dr. Natalie Taco, Sam Evans, Dr. Laura Shank, Jacob Zinn, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky, The Malenskys, Kevin Williams, Holly Page, Jay Meredith, Nikki Morley, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Barbara Bennett, Ken Tryon, Ann Yoshioka, Marianne Rossi, Turan Hanton, April Taylor, Nancy Fetters, Alexa Lopez, Alyssa Buchter, Colin Yates, Chelsea James, Rudy Lindmer, Jennifer Conti, Daniel Cohen, Kelly Palawi, Rowena White, Zach Poe, and Jamie Chavez. Thank you all so much for your incredible contributions over the last couple weeks. We'll be back on Tuesday with a new interview episode, one I'm really excited to share with y'all. And until then, remember, friends, the words Newsy credits backwards are Steiderk Yeswen. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo. I think most conservationists are hoping that the Wait, you're still here? What are you still doing here? Guys, the podcast is over. Go listen to something else now. No, guys, seriously, I'm leaving. I gotta go. I gotta go save red pandas and tree kangaroos. And by save them, I mean look at their pictures and videos on Instagram. But yeah, podcast's over. There's no hidden humor here or anything. Go.